if we look carefully, there is a direct correlation between a good society and the quality of education. The young man over there mentioned Finland. It was not done sporadically. It was a dedicated vision that led them to where they are now. Without vision, without clarity about where we're heading nowhere. Tokenism might be useful. A company does one there, 2 teachers are trained there. That is fine, but I can tell you it's only a drop in an ocean. It doesn't do much. We have to confront the fundamentals. And let me also say this, that it is dangerous to leave education, government people hear me, it's dangerous to leave education in the hands of private companies. See what became of us when we left education in the hands of the British. What kind of education did we get? Education to be clerks, pen pushers that couldn't create anything. To give the whole subject of education to aliens who are interested only in their own selfish drive is a dangerous thing for any society. The worst thing you must leave for anybody who doesn't have the total public interest at heart is education. It is too sensitive to be left alone. Government as a group will have to take charge of this, define the zone, define what we want as a country, and then other people can key in. If we don't do that, we're treading on dangerous grounds. Let me also emphasize what the Prof said earlier in the day, that education is not just a matter of going to school, it's a very broad area. When you have a criminal being appointed and sanctioned by a government body as a first-class chief, as a role model, what kind of education do you expect the people from the young men and women from that community to pursue? They have come to understand that education does not pay in the sense in which we have defined it. Let us look at our values. Education cannot be valueless. A society that pursues education has to come from the position of value. What are the values that are important to Nigeria? This is why education is at the bottom. Because the values do not enhance respect for education. These are the fundamentals. And I love what the young man that works for the National Assembly said. He said, if we have to be faithful to our country, we need to come together and hold the government accountable. That is where it begins and that's where it ends. We must force them to understand that education is not something you leave to standards by. Education is central to the soul of Nigeria.
What's the role of government in this regard? Because there are perceptions about private sector coming into place. So what would the government do to ensure that it's effective and viable, driving a robust education system?
First of all, we expect the understanding, to be rife, to be common, that education is the most serious business that we have as a country. It seems to some of us that is not clear to many people who hold power. The first thing that is the business of a government is to ensure that there is security, and then the second thing is to ensure that there's a continuation of the society in a progressive way, and that can only happen through education. But education is not regarded as such, I'm afraid. Education is always like an afterthought. There is, for instance, no articulated vision of where Nigeria expects to be as an educated country in the next 10 years. What kind of skills do we need? What kind of country do we want to become? What is our comparative advantage? What do we want to sell as a nation? How do we take our stand in the Committee of Nations? What is it that makes us special? There's no such thinking. And that's the problem. What you find is some levels of tokenism here, which I described as a drop in the ocean. Education is too important to be left to everybody and to be left to the private sector, to be left to the NGOs, for people to drive the interests which may not be for the good of Nigeria. it's important for government to take ownership and drive public policy that's in the interest of everybody. Then the rest of us, private sector, can key in. We cannot leave our nation barren. We cannot leave our nation unguarded. Education is really letting your guards down if it's unattended. It's really, I can't say, I don't know how to be more serious about this. You know, it's like leaving your wife for other people to impregnate. That is how it is when you don't pay attention for a nation to education. So you have all manner of ideas coming from all manner of characters pollinating your community. And in the end, you wonder why people do not have any respect or priority for education. Values are the bedrock upon which education rests. Values gave birth to the whole question of education. The question we probably need to ask is the basic one. Why do societies need education? Societies need education so that they can help young ones and those coming in new to fit in well within the structure of that society, to be able to help that society make progress. That's what education is for. It is for the social good. And that social good has to rest on fundamental values. It is those values that determine what's important for a nation and what is not important. If a nation, for instance, is militarily biased, wants to be a strong, dominant military nation in the world, the kind of education that it will have will be different. It will be skewed towards military school. It will be skewed towards computer engineering for rockets and nuclear science and that type of thing. So you need to have a deliberate policy that helps you to define what kind of society you should have in the near future. That is the role of education. I mean, we had a government in Nigeria not too long ago that banned the study of history from the curriculum. How can we find ourselves who cannot even locate our past?